So we're going to get started right away and talk to you about this fantastic archipelago of islands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So a couple of quick words about Wheel and Anchor for those who are new. I see a few names on our participant list who have maybe not been on a webinar before. We are a community of travelers from all across Canada. How we got started was about 5 years ago, after I'd been working in and around the travel industry for the better part of 30 years, more than 30 years. And I've seen all manner of groups, and I've organized various groups from a handful of people to literally thousands. And I realized that the dynamic of travelers is different when you have people who have a kind of a like-minded view of the world and how to travel and how to be and how to conduct yourself and how to be inquisitive and respectful and all those things that I think, particularly as Canadian travelers, there's a shared set of values that is kind of almost understood. And sure, maybe not everybody has them, but at the same time, for those that if you've recently joined, you've read our Traveler's Creed, and so you have a sense of what we are all about and why we are who we are and what makes this community kind of tick. And so that's our that's my goal for everyone at all of our members at Wheel and Anchor. And of course, we want you to become well-traveled in the sense that, you can honestly come away with a relationship to a place. Not just having tick boxes of having been there, not just going, oh, it's Thursday, it must be Paris, but rather enjoying the travel and getting educated in such a way that really makes a difference for you in terms of how you relate to it, how you connect to it. So this is a little bit about our philosophy at Wheel and Anchor. And so before we get into the thick of it, allow me to introduce myself and my team. My name is Gordon Dreger. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I'm the one who curates each and every one of the trips that we offer, and we put a lot of effort into organizing these. And with trips like the Azores, every single time we do it, we're tweaking this, we're tweaking that, so that each group of members that goes over is going to have a unique experience, and a sort of a tried and tested experience, and particularly with a destination like this, which we keep going back and back to, and we typically are going in groups of around 10 to 14 people, and they all come back with great feedback about the Azores, about our guides, our partners over there. Anyway, sorry. So that was a long introduction. I want to introduce as well our two of my team, Barb, who's joined me here on the webinar. Good morning, Barb.
Morning.
Barb are our trip specialists who are there to help answer any questions that you have about our programs, as well as get you signed up for the ones that interest you most. So if you haven't already, I'm sure you will in due course speak to Barb or Paula. So today we're going to take you on, as usual, a little photographic journey around the Azores, which has some of the most amazing scenery of any island that I've seen. I love going back there. I've been 3 or 4 times myself, and I thoroughly enjoy it every time. It's just like you just want to stop the driver and say, stop here, stop at every corner, because the scenery is so amazing. So we're going to take you on the journey. Just a photo from one of our previous trips. This was last spring, a group. And you get a sense, you obviously, when you look out from the island, from all these green mountains, you look out over this azure blue sea, like the color of the Atlantic Ocean around the Azores is just incredible. And I probably could have stuck a couple more photos in there, but just to give you a sense of what your fellow members kind of look like. So as I say, we are going to be focusing on the island of São Miguel in the Azores. The Azores, of course, as you can see in the inset map here, is an archipelago, which is an autonomous region of Portugal. It's located about a third of the way across the Atlantic, so it's quite far out there. And there are a number of different islands, but far and away the most interesting island is the island of São Miguel, the largest island, also where the capital, the principal city, Ponta Delgada is. That's where we're going to be flying into. And so our trip, as I say, is going to take us by flight from Toronto, which flies nonstop to Ponta Delgada on SATA, or what they call Air Azores now. More recently, they changed the name. And from here, we're going to see pretty much the whole island. And we're going to spend most of our time in this town of Furnas, which is inside a volcanic crater. And we always go back to the same spot because it's just a great gateway to the whole eastern side of the island. I mean, the views are great everywhere on the island, but particularly this side is the most picturesque. So I'll spend our time in there and through around this part of the island. And then on our second last day, we will circumnavigate along the north coast of the island, back around to the west to Sete Cidades, before returning for our final night in Ponta Delgada, where we will stay before then flying either back home or, although this trip is the last in a series of trips around Portugal in October. So we link up our trips in Portugal. We have the south of Portugal, the Algarve region, which is in fact where I'm going to be heading literally on Friday, so in just a couple of days, to go in and check up on our itinerary, check up on our programs, maybe make a few changes for next year. So our Algarve and South Portugal program for 2024 for fall is not yet out, and as I say, it's because I'm going to go and see how we can make it even better than the one that we currently offer. And then following that, we have Porto and the Douro Valley. So you could combine any of these Portugal programs with the Azores program here. And so make a 2-week trip out of it, or even a 3-week trip out of it, depending on what your preference is. And this is one of the things that our members like, because you can kind of choose the duration that suits you. So let's jump right into the day-by-day itinerary. As I mentioned, we're going to be flying to and arriving in São Miguel, which is the island, specifically Ponta Delgada, the capital of the island. And it is very green. And I could show you hundreds, if not thousands of pictures that I have taken from various points on the island, and it is such a great place to photograph from all angles. But as I say, the main aspect of it is these green, and this is actually here on the west side of the island. This is the sides of a giant crater that this lake sits in, similar to the one that we're going to be staying in Furnas. So I just wanted to point that out here. When you fly from Toronto, it's about a 6-hour flight, so it's shorter than flying to Europe. By about, depending on where you're going in Europe, by a couple hours. And it's a night flight, like most flights to Europe. You leave in the evening, you arrive early in the morning. Our folks over there will pick you up at the airport first thing in the morning, and you'll be a little bit weary-eyed because it's one of those flights that you actually can't get a ton of sleep on, because with 6 hours, by the time you have the meal and when and then you go and you close your eyes for a couple hours, and next thing you know, they're waking you up to get ready for landing. And so it's short, which is nice, but it's almost so short that you don't get a lot of sleep on the flight. But that's okay, because we're gonna when you arrive, you're gonna have this amazing fresh Atlantic air. We're gonna pick you up, and we're gonna bring you around the island to Terra Nostra Garden Hotel, which is on, as I said, in the Furnas crater on the east side of the island. We're going to fill up the whole morning because, of course, normally you can't check into the hotel till sort of early to mid-afternoon. But we've got a few stops that we do. Again, we've run this trip a number of times now. We usually stop for some special callada, which is a special cheesecake they make in the Azores. There's a little town that we'll stop in for that. We'll take in some of the scenic viewpoints along the way. And the beauty of this trip is that, we have an itinerary that we describe, our program itinerary, that I'm going to sort of cover off the key highlights today. But we always play things by the weather, because the weather in the Azores tends to be quite changeable. So they say if you don't like the weather, wait 20 minutes. Because of its location in the Atlantic, the fronts tend to move over fairly quickly. So if the weather is beautiful, we might head up to Lago de Fogo. I'm going to show you a picture in a moment to take in some of the scenes while we can get great weather, because you never know if the next day the weather is a little bit more inclement in the morning or in the afternoon. So everything we do, and our partners are wonderful because they will ensure that we try to hit good weather for all of the key activities. So we'll arrive at the Terra Nostra. This is a lovely sort of contemporary style. It's actually Art Nouveau inspired hotel that is inside the crater. And its sort of key claim to fame is the fact that it has it is part of a giant complex with a huge pond, or it's actually more like a small lake that is thermally heated. And so during the morning hours and later in the evening hours, this is exclusively for the guests of the hotel, which is really amazing. You go out for a day of touring around, come back to the hotel. It is open to the public during the day, kind of like from 9 to 5 or something like that. But in the evening after 5 o'clock, you come back and you have the whole place to yourself. It's just amazing. And as I say, the hotel, very comfy and contemporary, with looking out over. They have a great botanical garden as well. It's just a wonderful spot. And our members always have great feedback staying at the Terra Nostra. And so the first day, again, you'll be a little bit, have a little bit of red eyes if you're coming from the trip from Canada. If you're coming from, of course, from Portugal, you'll probably be raring to go. And of course, it's a very walkable area. You can go out and meander around town on your own. But the next day, we're actually going to explore the Lake of Furnas. So here in this photo, you can see the crater walls, part of the crater walls. It goes much further around to the other side. And one of the main sites here is the Lake of Furnas itself, which we're actually going to hike all the way around. Now, you look at the map, you think it's a long way. It's actually not that far to hike all the way around. And so we're going to go kind of more on an amble, because along the way, you'll see things like, you'll see the Calderos del Agua, the Furnas, which is the hot springs that are at one location on the lake. They actually have an area where you can take a thermal bath at Poquia de Doña Beja. So there's a couple of stops along the way that we're going to make in order to make it a very relaxing, very scenic, very just energizing kind of a day. A great way to spend the first day in the Azores. There's also a lovely little church that we pass by. And then we're going to stop along the way at a local restaurant to have a Azorean specialty, it's actually particularly a specialty of the area around Furnas because of the geothermal activity. It's called cozido. And cozido is where they take this special pot and they fill it full of local meats and vegetables and potatoes, and they sink it into the earth, which is hot. Like in many places around the town, you can sort of dig down literally a few inches, and the soil, like the earth, is hot because the whole area is geothermal. So they dig a pit, drop in the pot, and the food gets cooked in the ground. It's really cool. It's really tasty. Our members, again, always say what a special treat it is to try this local dish that doesn't require cooking in an oven, because they can just use the heat from the earth. It won't be a long day. We'll be back in time for you to sort of relax, to enjoy the thermal baths right at Terra Nostra in the backyard, so to speak, as well as to take in a little bit more of the town. We've got a whole day built in because, again, the idea behind this program is that it's a more relaxed pace. There are some other places. If you enjoyed, for example, the hot springs at Poquia de Doña Beja that I mentioned in the previous picture, on the previous day, you can return to there. For those that are, for example, would love to try golfing in the Azores, there's a championship golf course that's not too far away. Some of our members like to hike out to the sea. There is a village that is it's probably about an hour and a half hike from Furnas. You can hike right out to the sea. You can go up to one of the miradoros, the viewpoints, with incredible views over the valley. There's any number of things to do. And between our local guide and your host, you can sort of coordinate what suits you best. And so you can sort of run off on your own with your partner, or your travel companion, or your friend, or with a bunch of members. Again, we sort of give you a number of different options, and it's a nice way to sort of enjoy and explore and take it all in at the pace that you want. And we always have members that want to go for a little bit more of a challenging hike or something like that. So lots of options to do. You may also head up to this lake. I mentioned it on the first day if the weather's nice. This lake here, and I've walked myself down to the shoreline along here from this viewpoint called Pico de Barossa, which overlooks another crater lake on the island called Lake Fogo. So picturesque. What you can't see here in the picture is that literally the Atlantic Ocean you can see on both sides, on the north and south sides of the island from this viewpoint. Truly, truly magical, and just gives you a taste of what the Azores is all about. We'll spend a full day trip going out to the east side of the island, particularly a town called Nordeste, which I'm sure you can guess means northeast. It's a fantastic place to have vistas looking out over the Atlantic Ocean. We'll stop at these we'll stop at the Vue de Noiva, which is this cascading waterfall that you see here. We'll also visit the Goriana tea plantation. In fact, it's the only tea plantation in Europe, because of course Europe's climate is typically not suited for tea, but here in the Azores, because it is so mild, because you're in the middle of the Gulf Stream, they actually grow tea here, and so you'll be able to taste some of that tea and even take some home with you. We'll also stop at the first settlement on the island, a little village called Povoa Chao, which is super cute. You have a chance to visit the center and maybe picked up a little craft or two, and it'll be a nice way to explore. And we're actually not covering much ground this day. This is sort of all about a leisurely day to take in these, because I can already imagine what's going to happen. Members go, oh, let's stop at this corner, let's stop at this corner. Each turn that you make, the views are more, one is more spectacular than the next. Then the next full day is when we'll head out again, and I stick the map up here. So the previous day, we kind of hit this corner of the island. As I say, it's not a great distance. It's lots of curvy roads, though, sort of up and down as you make your way through the side of the volcano that faces out to the sea. Then the following day, we're going to travel from Furnas all the way to this other side of the island. Now, it may look in comparison like a long way, but actually once you get to the north side of the island here, to the town of Ribera Grande, it's actually a 4-lane highway that goes along much of the island. The infrastructure is pretty remarkable on this island. It doesn't even have that many people. I think the total population of São Miguel is like 100,000 people. So it's really like a suburb of one of our cities. And so you'll have amazing views along the north side of the island until you get to Sete Ciudades, which I'm going to show you here, which is this amazing twin lakes, blue and green. Once again, I think I showed the picture at the beginning. This is the side of the volcano. We'll be right up here on the edge of the volcano. On one side, you're looking out to the deep blue waters of the Atlantic Ocean. On the other side, you're overlooking these amazing lakes that have quite a legend associated with them. The local belief is that these were tears of an angel who was crying, and I don't recall the whole exact story, but that's why the color of the water is blue on one side and green on the other. It's quite a sight to see. It'll be an amazing place to spend part of the day before we make our way back to Ponta Delgada, the capital city. And we're going to stay here at the Marina Atlantico for our last night in the Azores. I love this hotel. It's quite modern and contemporary. I mean, the hotel itself is not, well, it is special in the sense that it's located right across the street from the harbor. So this is kind of where you look out at, looking again out over the ocean. And just over here to the right, across the street from the hotel, they have the sea baths. And I encourage everybody to go for a swim in the Atlantic Ocean. The water, and this is one of the beauties of the Atlantic Ocean, of the Azores, excuse me, is that the water temperature stays pretty mild all year round. So I've been there in late November, and I've gone swimming in these sea baths that I'm referring to that are just inside the seawall here. The water is beautiful. It's crisp. But in in October, when we're going, the water temperature is typically still in and around sort of 22, 21, 22 degrees. So it's, it's not bath water, but it's quite a comfortable temperature to swim. And as I say, the Marina Atlantico Hotel, right across the street, overlooking the harbor, a great place. And Ponta Delgada is a tiny town. It's only like 25,000 people. You can walk around the whole city center in a matter of a couple of hours and take in sort of the vibe of the town. We'll be having our farewell dinner here at a lovely local restaurant to try some of the specialties. Of course, needless to say, there's lots of seafood on the menu, but they also have, and this is what you'll see in the Azores, they have quite an agriculture, like quite a lot of farms that exist on the island. So they actually eat quite a variety of things, from not only fish and seafood, obviously, but lamb and beef. And they've got, really terrific. And most of the food is grown and comes from the island. And of course, this is what we like, this whole farm to table organic sort of thing. On our last day, before we fly out later in the evening, we're going to be doing some whale watching. In fact, we'll do it the day before, because on previous trips we've tried to do it the same day, and it's always a little bit risky. So we will try to slot in the whale watching so that you catch it in case the weather is not ideal on the day that you're supposed to go. And the neat thing about whale watching in the Azores is that there's whales present in these waters kind of all year round. Now, the actual species of whale depends largely on the time of the year, because most whales, of course, are migratory and they're passing through from, the North Atlantic to the South Atlantic. But you could almost always spot whales. And the whaling, culture or industry, which obviously is not practiced anymore in Portugal. I shouldn't say obviously, because of course some countries still do practice it. But what's interesting is that they have, high up in the hills, because you've got the steep hills of the volcanoes, they have these lookout points from where they have spotters that can look out with their binoculars out over the sea, and then they radio down to the boats. So the likelihood of spotting whales is much, much higher. I mean, of course, there's no guarantees in nature, but there's a really good chance. The one time I was able to go whale watching, we definitely saw some fantastic humpback whales. It's always an incredible experience to go whale watching. And, of course, there's a bunch of dolphins and other marine creatures that you can probably see along the way. And in the meantime, you have this spectacular backdrop of São Miguel, the Azores in the back. It's a great way to end off the trip. And then, as I say, we'll have a nice farewell dinner before flying out the next day. So that is our trip. It's a 7-day trip, easily done from Canada. So if you want to go just for a week, a lot of our members who haven't traveled with us before want a quick trip to sort of check things out, see how we run our operations. They booked the Azores, but of course, as I say, it is combinable with Porto and the Douro Valley, which will be happening immediately before. So the details on this trip, the 23rd to the 29th of October 2024, pricing here in Canadian dollars, and that's for all of the land services. It's all detailed, of course, in the program itinerary. You've got 6 nights of accommodation, breakfast every day, sightseeing, and then we've obviously included some lunches and dinners along the way. Generally, we have 2 meals a day, breakfast and then either lunch or dinner, other than on free days. Gives you a chance as well to go out and sample some of the local cuisine, or if, for example, you have too much local cuisine, you can just have something a little bit more conventional. There's always a good burger joint in the area, is what I say. And but I know that our members in traveling to the Azores have really enjoyed the cuisine. So you certainly will be happy to go out and take that in all on your own. So of course, the only thing that we help you facilitate in addition is the airfare and air taxes, and the cancellation insurance, which we highly, highly recommend, particularly with all of these crazy events going on around the world. Insurance is a must. So, oh yes, finally, before I take some questions, so if you do have any questions, get ready to type them into the chat box, and Barb will let me know, and we'll get those addressed for you. Here are the airfare costs typically. Actually, I was just checking for this year in October, and you can still actually fly out of Toronto nonstop to the Azores and back for less than $1,000. So this is probably a high estimate. But of course, as I say, we can assist you with your airfare or book it on your own. And if you are flying from other cities in Canada, SATA or Air Azores does have arrangements, so you can do a connecting flight from, if you're out west in Calgary or Vancouver or wherever, and into Toronto to catch that evening flight out on SATA Airlines. So finally, before we get to the questions, if you do sign up for our trip early on, we are able to extend our early booking bonus, so you get a couple of $100 off that. So takes a little bit of the cost of the airfare out. So do join us early. This trip usually fills up a fair number of months in advance, and so yeah, we'd be delighted to have you along. So Barb, do we have any questions? Of course, if you have questions that are very specific or to your own requirements, your own travel arrangements, you're welcome to email or call Paula or Barb at the email addresses shown here. And otherwise, let's take some questions.
Sure. Okay, so there is a question about what type of vehicles would be used. You mentioned it's sort of a 10 to 14 size group generally.
We typically use a Mercedes Sprinter or equivalent. So we typically use like a 19 passenger van, but we always have empty seats. So we never plan to fill those up. For this trip, we usually plan a maximum of 16 guests. And this van is great. It's comfortable. It's roomy. It doesn't feel like a bus. And it's able to negotiate all the windy roads quite well. The roads are excellent, by the way. They put ours to shame, actually.
Okay, perfect. And is there a lot of walking or physical activity involved in this particular trip?
So I would consider this trip to be consistent with most of our trips in terms of activity level. So we would designate it a moderate. I did mention, for example, that, on the second day, we're going to be walking around Lake Furnas. So, it's a bit of a hike. It's probably 5 kilometers in total. It's not a sprint. We don't need to do it in a hurry. But that is the longest walk of the day. To really enjoy this the best, it's like, as we say in our additional information on a lot of our trips, if you're out there and able to walk fairly comfortably 10,000 steps in a day, not necessarily all at once, then you'll be in fine shape for this trip.
Okay, perfect. That's all that's come in so far. But yeah, definitely people can reach out to us. We do have the additional information document we can send out for anybody that's interested in this trip here.
Most definitely. I should mention the weather, Barb, because that's something I didn't really touch too well.
You mentioned the water temperature.
I said the weather, but I didn't say the air temperature. So I say this island and the Azores in general, again, they sit in the middle of the Gulf Stream. So they never get really hot in summer and they never get really cold in winter. In October, typically, and again, these days the weather is very unpredictable, but typically you're looking at temperatures around 20 degrees, sort of 19 to 21 during the day, and in the evening it drops down to sort of the mid-teens. Could be even a bit cooler, but I would say that's less likely. And as I mentioned, it rains in the Azores all the time, but mostly when it rains, it'll come in, a cloud will, a front will move in, 20 minutes, rains like crazy, and then it moves over, and it could be raining on one side of the island and not on the other. So the weather changes quite quickly there. We always say particularly for a trip like this, you definitely want to have your rain gear handy, have an umbrella, have a waterproof shell, because you could set out on a beautiful day and then you'll hit a little spot of rain and then it'll be nice again after that. So that's kind of how it works with that.
Okay, good. Excellent. Yeah.
Excellent. So as Barb said, if you do have any other questions, please drop us a note. We'd love to have you on this trip. It's a fun one. Again, we keep bringing it back every year because so many people, I think the Azores is a must see, and it's not on a lot of folks' radar screen. We don't think about it. We generally fly over it on the way to Europe, but it is absolutely worth the stop. And as I say, I can't wait to go back. I always really, really enjoy the Azores. So please consider joining us next year, and give Paula or Barb a call if you have any questions you'd like to sign up. And otherwise, thanks for joining in. We've got lots more webinars in store. In fact, on Thursday, we're going to be talking about India. One of my favorite, well, they're all my favorite trips, but this trip visiting the beautiful palaces of India is in store for you on Thursday. So if you haven't already decided to join us for that, then please check our latest newsletter for the link to that. So take care. Thanks again, everybody. Have yourselves a great rest of the day. Bye-bye for now.